I'm Mindy. Todd, welcome to The Point. Today we continue our series of primary debates. We welcome the Democratic candidates running for state representative in the 3rd Barnstable District. The winner of this primary will face Republican candidate David Vieira in the general election. Michael Blanton and Matt Patrick, welcome. Good to see you both.
Thank you.
Thank you very much.
A reminder of our format for listeners: up to a minute for answers to questions, which we rotate. Who answers first? 30 seconds for rebuttals if needed, and up to 2 minutes for closing comments. We remind listeners, if you'd like to pose a question, please pose the same question to both candidates. And Michael Blanton, we're going to start with you. For listeners who are not familiar with you and your background, tell us about yourself and why you think you'd be the best candidate.
Sure. Thank you very much, Mindy, and really appreciate the opportunity to speak to you and the viewers and also to sit with Matt here as well. My name is Michael Blanton, and I am running for state representative for the 3rd Barnstable District here, encompassing Bourne, Falmouth, and Mashpee. I grew up in Bourne. I'm a local guy who I washed ashore when I was a year old, so the old salts still tell me I am a wash ashore. But I grew up here. I went through all the Bourne public schools, from kindergarten all the way on up to high school. I'm a product of public education in my undergrad and graduate studies as well at UMass Dartmouth. And I've served here, worked in the community, grown up around friends, neighbors, and the reason why I drove into public service, my grandmother always told me, if you're not part of the solution, you're part of the problem. And I took those words to heart. In school, I studied political science and East Asian studies. In my work, I worked in economic development, and I've also served with the Quinawampanoag tribe over on the vineyard. So I think I bring a diverse set of skills that would serve the residents here.
Thank you. Matt Patrick.
Thank you, Mindy. It's a pleasure to be here. I've lived here on the Cape for about 34 years, raised a family, 2 children, went to Falmouth Public Schools, worked in the trades, first as a carpenter and then as a plumber and a mason. Then I got involved with some public service and saving the Quashnet River because I was a fisherman, and I found out there was a subdivision plan there for 400 condominium units, and I got together with a big group to save that and buy that, get the state to purchase it. Then I went to work with the Cape Cod Commission, the Coalition for the Cape Cod Commission Act, and we managed to successfully get that into law. I was a Falmouth selectman for 2 terms, and also your state representative for 5 terms, 10 years.
All right, thank you. All right, Matt Patrick, we'll start with you this time. In June, the legislature's Joint Committee on Revenue reported favorably to the legislature to expand the state's room occupancy excise tax to include vacation home rentals, saying it could generate hundreds of thousands of dollars to towns. Where do you stand on that?
I think that's a good thing, and I would have voted for it. I think the towns will have a chance to vote to put that into effect. And I think there's a lot of revenue there that's going untaken, and I think it's really unfair to the businesses, the hotels, and the what do they call, the bed and breakfast that do pay that. So they're competing unfairly with homeowners who just rent out their places. So I think although it may be difficult to collect that money, I think it's an important thing to do.
All right, thank you. Michael Blanton, same question.
Well, thanks very much for the question. And I'm going to differ with Matt on that. I am absolutely opposed to that. I've been involved in real estate for over 15 years. I used to serve on the Association of Realtors Board of Directors and as their Government Affairs Task Force chair. We studied this issue in depth, and I had been a vocal opponent with the Cape Cod Selectmen and Councils Association. I've gone to bat against my friend, the former Rep. Cleon Turner from down the Lower Cape, and other folks who had proposed this increase. We see it as an unfair onus upon private property owners. These are folks that generally sometimes own investment properties, and they're not represented by votes here in the district. So it becomes an us versus them issue. Then for folks who are house rich and cash poor, we've got a lot of folks struggling here on the Cape, and the only way they're able to pay their mortgages at times is to rent rooms on out. And we just think that collection is going to be an absolute nightmare. So for a lot of those reasons, we just think that this is the wrong way to go.
All right, thank you. Next question, Matt. Mike, we're going to start with you. What's your plan for economic growth in our region? There's been this push for what's being called the blue economy, or business that's marine-centered. What are your thoughts on how we expand the local economy?
Another great question. I'm really excited to talk about the blue economy, having worked as a marine science instructor here in Woods Hole, and I think we had your own Heather Goldstone on board our boat Ocean Quest, and we did hands-on marine science excursions. So I've had a lot of work with the Woods Hole community, Marine Biological Laboratories, National Marine Fisheries, and NOAA, and we've had some wonderful, successful Woods Hole spin-off companies, and these are scientists that perfected their technologies here while under the employ of the Marine Science Corridor here in Woods Hole. And then after they went off into the private sector, were able to spin off very successful marine science, marine engineering related enterprises that create jobs, create innovation, and spur on investment in the areas. Just on Tuesday, as a board selectman, I went to preview the floating hydrokinetic platform that was moored off of Mass Maritime. It's going to be a very exciting technology that they're employing now for a month. They're going to apply for permits through the DEP to expand and extend that out. And I think that'll bring some real investment to the Main Street Buzzards Bay area and certainly to the Upper Cape economy.
Thank you. Matt Patrick, same question.
Well, I'm very much in favor of the offshore wind projects that we have scheduled for south of Martha's Vineyard and also east of Martha's Vineyard. And I think, I know for a fact that once those start going in, they're going to create a lot of jobs, not only in southeastern Massachusetts, but also specifically in Falmouth and Bourne and Mashpee, because a lot of those boats that leave for those areas are going to leave from our towns, because we have the housing, we have the services, and so on. I'm also I have been involved with our big project, the MEP, Mass Estuaries Project, cleaning up our bays and estuaries, and I've found that we have found that oyster cultivation is going to be a huge employment center for the Cape.
Yeah, thank you.
May I rebut?
Yes, sure, go ahead.
Oh, thanks, Mindy. I also just want to add on to there that the project that Matt referenced offshore, I think is going to be a real benefit to the area, and I think it's substantially different from the former Cape Wind proposal, which unfortunately turned into a failed proposal and a boondoggle at the end. This has been I think well-financed, and this is planned on out better through Dong Enterprises and the other folks that are pushing that from the state.
All right. Go ahead.
I would disagree with Michael. I think that Cape Wind was a viable project. It was proven. It was put through 13 years' worth of review that no other energy project, even the nuclear power plants, have ever gone through, and it came out with an environmental okay. So, what hurt it was politics and organizations financed by Bill Koch, one of the biggest oil producers in the world.
Right, thank you. Matt Patrick, we're going to start with you this time. Cape Cod the Barnstable County had the state's highest rate of opioid deaths per capita in 2015. Your thoughts, are we doing enough to combat this epidemic? I know there's a lot of people working on a lot of different fronts. What are your thoughts on how we combat this?
No, I would say we're not doing enough. The Cape has, unfortunately, more deaths than any other area in the Commonwealth. We need to be providing more rehab on demand, if you will. We need, after that, to provide transition into residential locations where people who go through rehab have some place to go where they can continue their treatment. And we need to do more to educate people. I understand now that there are high schools that are dedicated to children or students who are addicted to drugs. We have them in the other parts of the state. Why don't we have them here on the Cape, where we have the huge problem? There's so much more we can do that wasn't addressed in the last bill. That I'm looking forward to really getting into the State House and filing budget amendments and debating these issues on the floor of the House.
Thank you. Michael Blanton, same question.
That's really the one of the most important topics, I think, that addresses the district right now. It was, I think, very sobering to see that of the 20 towns in the Commonwealth that were hardest hit by opioid overdoses, 4 of those towns were right here on the Cape, and many of them were right here on the Upper Cape. So obviously we're clearly not doing enough, but I think we're taking steps in the right direction. The police chief in Gloucester, who proposed his Angel program, where he was proactively reaching on out to the community and encouraging folks to bring their bring their difficulties to the police station, bring their chemistry, seek treatment, and he would not prosecute them, but rather make sure that they get attached to treatment programs. I think that's become a model nationally. It's being looked at. We should be promoting that here with the police chiefs here on the Cape. We certainly need insurance reform, and if elected to the state legislature, I would make sure that not only would insurance companies be required to cover longer stays, but we'd also tackle the medical industry and make sure that doctors are not overprescribing.
All right, thank you. I want to follow up with this because I've asked the other candidates the same question. Everybody mentions education, and certainly we need better education with young people. Some of the young people that have been in recovery that I've talked to said they had no idea about the risk that they were facing, that this was something they went down this road not really understanding what happened. So I'd like your thoughts on how we educate not only the young people, but the community at large about this issue. And Michael Blanton, we'll start with you.
No, thank you very much, Mindy. I'm excited to report. In Bourne, we're doing something similar to what Sandwich is doing, where we've actually we assembled a task force. In Bourne, the task force we have has personnel from the schools, from police, from fire, from the treatment community, and they're all coming together. I'm a part of that community as well. We speak to how do we put these programs into early education. We've debated back and forth. It's a little bit awkward to try to figure out how young do you want to bring the information to how do you want to bring the information to the young people? Is it grades 3 through 5? Is it grades 6 through 8? But we want to introduce the topic early enough so that kids in our community recognize that this is a danger, this is a path they don't want to go down, and a whole bunch of education put in front of this community in the right way at the right time will hopefully discourage them from taking a detrimental path in the future. So this is something we're doing here in the area. I think we can replicate this in the Upper Cape and seek state resources to underwrite that.
Thank you. Matt Patrick, same question.
I think one of the best ways to educate our youth is to bring their peers in who have been addicted to drugs or alcohol and let them talk to people their own age and be able to answer questions. I also want to reiterate the high school, the high school that's dedicated, that just has addicted people in it. We need to make sure we have one here on the Cape. I think that's a very viable way to help our kids get off of drugs. But in the end, I think it really depends on families to make sure that their children are not are educated about it. And I think all too often we've forgotten about it through the years and taken it lightly. That's why I'm very cautious about permitting marijuana use.
Thank you. We're talking with the candidates running for state representative in the 3rd Barnstable District. We'll talk more after a quick break. You're listening to The Point, our series of primary debates continuing with the Democratic candidates running for state representative in the 3rd Barnstable District, Michael Blanton and Matt Patrick. 866-999-4626 is our toll-free number if you'd like to pose a question to the candidates. 866-999-4626. Our email address is thepoint@capeandislands.org. Matt Patrick, we start with you this time. Do you support expanding the bottle bill to include some non-carbonated beverages like sports drinks and water?
Yes, I do, and I actually filed that bill the last time I was in the legislature. I think anybody who walks our roads or runs along our roads will see a lot of these non-carbonated beverage containers alongside of the road. It's an eyesore at the very least, but it also could be considered dangerous because a lot of that plastic ends up in our oceans and ends up choking a lot of sea life, especially marine mammals and things. The other thing I was going to say about that, too, is I'd like to see the price for deposits increased, or the bottle deposit increased from 5 cents to roughly 10 cents, and that would make it much more likely for people to go around and pick up those containers.
Thank you. Michael Blanton, same question.
Well, this is an area I think where Matt and I clearly agree 100%. I would absolutely not only support the bottle bill in its present form, but I would definitely expand that to cover sports drinks and the like. But there has been a lot of conversation over whether or not it should cover the small nip bottles that are becoming so popular. And absolutely, I think we're in total lockstep on this one. It's appalling to see the amount of plastic trash that I know I pick up from my front yard and many of my neighbors pick up from their front yard on a regular basis. The availability of the nips it makes them easy to conceal in a pocketbook or a pocket, easy to contribute to, I think, underage drinking, certainly drinking and driving, and a whole host of measures that are just not positive for the communities we serve. And I'd agree that also this plastic trash does, during storm events and rainwater events, they end up in the water, and they end up polluting the water and also serving as a danger towards a lot of marine life, and also as a deterrence to our beaches. That is, tourism's a backbone of our economy.
Thank you. Michael Blanton, we're going to start with you this time. Would you support a move to get more freight shipped from Martha's Vineyard from New Bedford rather than Woods Hole?
I would. Thanks for the question, Mindy. I would support that. There's been an awful lot of discussion in Falmouth about the degradation to the roadways here, and as a selectman over in Bourne, I'm familiar with roadways budgets and the constant cost to try to keep on up with roadway improvements, try to keep traffic flowing in a way that keeps tourism flowing here. The traffic that the freight trucks end up bringing to the area stifle growth. They bring air pollution, roadways pollution, oil on the roads. And if there's a way that we could share that with New Bedford, who is desirous of that freight shipping coming from their ports, I think that we could share the load. There's still certainly going to be business benefits to the Woods Hole and the Falmouth area here, but we can lessen the negative impacts by diverting that.
Matt Patrick, same question.
Yes, absolutely. That issue is probably 25, 30 years old. My good friend Frank Shepard used to be a staunch advocate for that. And if I remember correctly, there was a provision allowing for that, for freight to leave New Bedford. I think the Steamship Authority was willing to grant licenses to other companies or other boats to do that. For some reason, it never took hold, and I'm not sure why. Probably convenience for the drivers, but I think it may, in the end, require some kind of state law that would require that so much freight is taken from New Bedford to the vineyard, especially during the summer months.
All right, thank you. Matt Patrick, we start with you this time. MCAS has been replaced by PARC, which not all educators have been happy about. Now we are working towards some hybrid of the two. Thoughts on standardized testing in general and the impact that
students
with IEPs or vocational programs?
Talk about a controversial subject. Going way back to when I was first in the legislature in 2000, it was fairly new then. We didn't know how it would work. How would students with special education plans, how would they fare? How would they be graded? We've come a long way since then, and I think that standardized testing is still very questionable. The need for it, the benefit of it, it does focus the teachers on teaching towards the tests, and I'm still not convinced that that's a really good thing. It does so much to hinder our education. If you look at other countries like Iceland, and not Iceland, I'm thinking Finland, and how they spend most of their time playing in school, and their kids end up with better educations, actually higher test scores than ours do by a long shot.
Thank you. Michael Blanton, same question.
Standardized testing, I believe there is a place for it, but I don't think that we've gone about it exactly the right way. I think what we've done is taken a national bar. We've applied it here to where New England generally, and Massachusetts specifically has some of the highest levels of education in our public schools and certainly in the private institutions around them. So to take this national standard that might not necessarily go as far as we were going already, it doesn't go far enough. I don't think that it promotes it allows for innovation in the classroom. It doesn't allow for flexibility for programs and teachers and their communication to make sure that the students are receiving the best educational experience they can possibly have. And that's really the goal of education, isn't it? That we want to make sure that the students come on out, develop critical thinking skills, become prepared to participate in the economy and the polity here. And I think the standardized test has to be re-examined.
All right, thank you. Michael Blanton, we start with you. Do you support raising the cap on charter schools?
Another great controversial item. I think this is another area where Matt and I will certainly differ. First and foremost, this is a ballot initiative, this question with regard to the cap, and I think it's a poorly written one, to be quite honest. That happens quite often with ballot initiatives. I think well-meaning ideas are proposed, but they become cast like this one in a black or white, all or nothing, zero-sum situation. I don't think it's a fair question. The way that it's written. I think the charter schools have done an enormous amount of good in terms of raising the bar for education. They've allowed options for families of all different diversities and all different backgrounds to participate in an alternative to a traditional public school or possibly a vocational technical school. There are a whole different host of options that families should be able to avail themselves to. So whether or not we should lift the cap, I would probably vote against lifting the cap. That being said, I would be very open to the conversation about how we can find the right place for charter schools in the right geographies that need them.
Thank you. Matt Patrick.
I'm opposed to raising the cap on charter schools. I think we have enough of them. Number one, not all charter schools are like Sturgis. As it turns out, their education product is very much on a par with our public schools. They drain about $5 million from Upper Cape schools, public schools, right there. And that hinders us from providing a lot of the things that we need, like early child care or early education programs for our very young kids. As it turns out, a study shows that mostly wealthy families send their children to these charter schools. Therefore, they're pre-selecting. Although unintentionally, that's what happens. And fourth, there is very little local control. When you look at all these boards, the majority is sometimes headed up by people with financial interests.
All right, you want to rebuttal?
If I may, I'm going to disagree with Matt with regard to the characterization that primarily wealthy families are sending their kids to the charter schools. I've been to Sturgis. I've visited Lighthouse Charter, a few other charter schools over on the Vineyard and elsewhere in the Commonwealth. And generally speaking, what I found is, of course, the wealthy individuals always have the access to private institutions that might even have other programs available for them. And charter schools actually allow for a more diverse student body. They allow for opportunities for students who come from various backgrounds, even poorer families, to get a truly innovative, different type of educational experience, in my estimation.
All right,
let me
go ahead.
Respond.
Sure.
That was actually product of a study that was conducted out in I think it was Greenfield, Mass. I may be mistaken, but they found that upper income people, not super rich, but people earning upwards of $125,000 were the majority of the parents of those kids who go to charter schools. So it's actually a fact that happens.
All right. Next question, Matt Patrick, we're going to start with you. Pilgrim Nuclear Power Station set to close by 2019. The legislature recently passed a measure creating a Pilgrim decommissioning panel. The measure was spearheaded by Plymouth Senator Vinnie DiMacedo, Harwich Senator Dan Wolf, Provincetown Representative Sarah Peake, yet there are no Cape seats on this panel. Does that matter to you, and would you work to change that? Of
course it matters. That was part of the compromise, I assume. But we definitely should be included. I'm the one who brought potassium iodide to every town on the Cape and the islands, as well as other towns in the area. So I think this is essential that we are covered. We're going to be affected by it if there ever is a problem at Pilgrim. God forbid that ever happens. But with the prevailing winds, especially in the winter out of the northwest, we will be affected by any radiation that is burned off or comes out of some kind of an accident there. So we definitely should be included in the planning and the closing of Pilgrim Nuclear Power.
Michael Blanton.
Thank you, Mindy. No-brainer. Absolutely. Of course, we should have CAPE seats available there. Not only is it a public safety concern for people in the greater Plymouth area, and of course decision makers in Boston, but it would affect the evacuation plans for any of the Cape residents, because certainly we would be in the circumference if there were any kind of a catastrophe that were to happen there. Not only do we need to have seats represented to make sure that we're included in any evacuation plans, but in terms of decommissioning, making sure the spent fuel rods are stored and transported elsewhere in a safe manner that protects the interest of folks who would be most affected, and that'd be anyone in the Plymouth area, but certainly close to the canal, my home, where that would be the exit point for any of the Cape residents. We certainly should have representation there, and unfortunately, years of having this debate, and the Cape residents' positions and views are still not necessarily advocated for as strongly as they should be, and I would lend my voice to that fight.
I'm going to do another question on this because this is such a big issue to a lot of listeners. I'm thinking about what you see as some of the key issues you would want this panel to address, and you touched on some of them. Michael Blanton, go ahead.
I'll just reiterate what I had covered right there earlier. Number one, evacuation route. Number two, decommissioning to make sure that's done in a safe manner and in a expeditious manner, not dragged on out. Three, make sure that there is sufficient bonding and funding available for the decommissioning. And then finally, those spent fuel rods, where are they being stored? How are they going to be taken care of? Is there a plan to ever evacuate them from the area? Is there any other place that they can go so that we don't have to suffer any detriments that might come from long-term storage of those? And are the storage facilities going to be sufficient? Unfortunately, when you see a decommissioning of an enterprise like that, there may be a tendency to cut corners, cut costs, and we want to make sure that those costs are not done in such a way that we bear the brunt of the onus if anything should go terribly wrong.
All right. Matt Patrick.
Well, I agree with Michael on a lot of those things. Evacuation is going to be a key issue that we need to resolve. And years ago, I filed a bill to make sure that we had places on the Cape to take cover or to protect us where people could evacuate to until the roads are cleared. I also think we need to look into the types of storage. There are several types of dry cask storage. Some of them last longer than others. They're more expensive, but those are the things that we need to do. And finally, security is going to be an issue there for as long as those casks are stored on site. And that's the plan. They're going to be stored on site for literally ever until we can find a place somewhere in this country, whether it's Yucca Mountain or not, that would take those casks.
Right. Massachusetts has, Matt Patrick, we'll start with you. Massachusetts has the fifth highest electricity rate in the nation. Natural gas is one solution, but there's been an outcry across the state, including here on the Cape. So would you support more natural gas infrastructure in Massachusetts?
No, Mindy, I would not. I would support providing more renewables, and we can do this with wind power. We can do this with solar power. I'm very proud of the legislation that I wrote that was in the Green Communities Act that enabled all of these photovoltaic solar panels to go up on roofs all over the state. This is now the green energy sector of our economy is now the fastest growing sector of our economy, and we have 6,000 new businesses, 100,000 new jobs. We need to continue that. When we buy natural gas, it's just a drain on our economy. For every dollar we spend on natural gas, we're getting maybe 10 cents worth of residual value in our economy. So we do not need to bring natural gas into the state, more of it. We need to do more with renewables.
Right. Michael Blanton.
With regard to natural gas, I would actually seek to try to improve the existing infrastructure before we look to expand substantially. We've had a number of issues in our state and in other neighboring states where there have been major leaks leading to inefficiencies, leading to environmental degradation. If we're going to put any money into natural gas rather than expansion, I'd like to see that we enhance and fix the problems we have now with the current infrastructure. And that being said, I'd agree with Matt that the future lies in renewables, but we also have to look at investments in solar, investments in wind, investments in hydrokinetic, in order to see those become profitable. But in the meanwhile, we still have to improve the existing infrastructure and make sure the homes are served here in the Commonwealth.
Thank you. And Michael Blanton, we start with you this time. Senators Barrett and Pacheco have proposed legislation that would put a price on carbon throughout the economy, not just in the energy sector. Any business importing fossil fuels would pay a fee, and the revenue would be refunded to Massachusetts residents. Would you support such legislation?
I would, Mindy. Thanks very much for the question. I think that there is certainly a time that we're in a time where we need to reduce our reliance on fossil fuels. This type of legislation is going to require good acting on the part of our corporate neighbors. Without such requirements, it's the nature of business to, try to do so as efficiently and cut costs in a way that makes it maximize their profits. We understand that. I understand business. I studied my MBA over at UMass Dartmouth, and one of the programs that we studied there and we put into practice in companies I've consulted for is the concept of corporate social responsibility. And if we do the right thing, if a company does right by the environment, the society, that they're going to see an uptick in their business model, they're going to see an improvement in their social profile, and that usually translates into profits. So if they do the right things that allow us to shrink that carbon footprint, decrease reliance on fossil fuels, and they promote that, they can actually improve their business and do well.
All right, Matt Patrick, same question.
Yes, actually, this was an issue that has been discussed previously. I've brought it up. I think it's important to include the cost of carbon that that they're not paying for right now, such as health costs. Mm-hmm. Environmental costs, and cost of our infrastructure from the pollution and the chemicals that are put in the air. When you look at the health costs, it's estimated that thousands of people are impacted by a fossil fuel plant in the general vicinity of it, not to mention people way downwind. Environmental costs are tremendous. Right now, that's the biggest source of carbon dioxide in our coastal estuaries, something we can do very little about. And infrastructure is something that's heavily impacted. We don't realize that, but all of our buildings and bridges and things are impacted by the chemicals that are in the exhaust from fossil fuel plants.
We are talking with the Democratic candidates running for state representative in the 3rd Barnstable District. We'll have more after a quick break. You're listening to The Point. We are talking with the Democratic candidates running for state representative in the 3rd Barnstable District, Michael Blanton and Matt Patrick. Having some technical issues with our phones this morning, so if you have a question, send it to our email address, thepoint@capeandislands.org. And we are going to start with Matt Patrick this time. And Matt, this is a question from Mary in Bourne. She says, there are many serious issues on Cape Cod, but for Upper Cape residents, on each side of the bridges, traffic from Memorial Day to Labor Day and ever increasing Monday through Friday is increasing. Traffic and tourism is not going away. I think I will be long gone before MassDOT starts serious investment in improvements. How can we speed this up and keep the conversation open to the public? Matt Patrick.
Well, I don't think a third bridge is imminent in any case. I think that's going to be a long shot. I do think that we need to improve public mass transportation. I think that needs to be worked on. I know Bourne has been very involved in getting a rail stop at Buzzards Bay, bringing the trains down to Buzzards Bay. This is an opportunity for us to pass the millionaire's tax, the 4% extra on any income over $1 million, which I support. That money will be dedicated to education, transportation, and our infrastructure, specifically mass transportation. So we need to improve those trains. Even if we bring the old ones down here to Buzzards Bay, they're not going to be very, very fast. In fact, it's going to take a long time for them to reach Boston and vice versa. So we need to really replace these trains and maybe even renew the bridge over the railroad bridge and make it, its capacity better able to accept those new trains.
All right, Michael Blanton.
My 16-year-old son is out in the studio, and he would chastise me if I were to rail against the traffic, because he has heard me so many times on the campaign trail as selectman and also as state rep try to cry the watchword that tourism, traffic equals tourism. So we're stuck with the traffic, folks. If you're on Cape Cod, that's a no-brainer. We understand that. And we learn to live with it. We learn to flex around that. But there are certain improvements we certainly can make. And I think Matt is absolutely right that if we improve the rail infrastructure, while I served for 8 years on the Cape Cod Commission, I had spoken about this several times with transportation engineers and Glenn Cannon and a few of the folks over at Cape Cod Commission over the years about that. And as a born selectman, I've also been a strong advocate for rail as a component of Main Street renovation and economic development. Just last Friday, I sat with the South Coast delegation. They're trying to bring rail down to Fall River and New Bedford, and we want to make sure that Bourne and Wareham, that as selectmen, we were a part of that conversation to ensure that we're in the conversation so that a rail spur to Buzzards Bay and Wareham would be part of the solution here. We think that will take cars off the highways and help the solution.
All right, Michael Blanton, we start with you. Affordable housing, it's one of those issues we seem to have been talking about for decades. But how would you propose we create more affordable housing, not only for low income, but for those young families who are finding it difficult to live here?
Great question, Mindy. This is one of the important issues I've been trying to tackle in this campaign. I've been in the real estate business for 15 years. I've served on the Bourne Housing Authority for 5 years. I've served with the Falmouth Housing Trust for a couple of years. And having grown on up here on the Cape, raising my 16-year-old son, watching other peers of mine struggle, usually the main focus of their struggle becomes that cost of housing. There's the cost of living we all know has increased and is expensive here on Cape Cod, but the cost of housing is just stifling. We've seen the Cape Cod Young Professionals did a demographic study between 2000 and 2010 where they found that those in the ages between 25 and 44, we lost a third of that population during that decade. Most of that revolved around the dearth of incomes that would actually help them to solve housing. I'd like to see the state enable better financing that will allow for financing for workforce housing, like we've done for senior housing. If we could have more financing mechanisms that would allow for more flexibility for workforce housing, then we could build that up.
All right. Matt Patrick, minute 15 here. We went a little bit over, so I'll give you a little extra time too.
I think we need to focus on our transportation hubs. I think the Cape Cod Commission has made this clear. We need to make sure that services are located there, which they are in most cases. We're talking about places like downtown Falmouth. We have our infrastructure. We have the sewers there. Why not allow these buildings to go up several stories higher? I'm not talking, high rises. I'm talking maybe 3 or 4 stories and tight locations. And when you look at our cities, the brownstones in Boston and New York, I think they're beautiful neighborhoods, and we can do something with that. They don't have to be considered as slums. In fact, some of the most beautiful housing, I think, in Boston are the brownstones. So why not do some of this? And I think it would become a magnet for young people to live and to raise their families.
Thank you. Matt Patrick, another issue that we as much debated is wastewater management. And of course, there's lots of different thoughts on how we tackle that, and all of them come with a big price tag. So your thoughts on wastewater management?
Right. They don't all come with a big price tag. I've been on the Falmouth Water Quality Management Committee for about 4 or 5 years now. We've looked at the alternatives. In fact, I brought that up in town meeting and enforced them to address that. And now we have several means of reducing the pollution, the nutrient pollution in our estuaries that are a lot less expensive, like inlet widening, a lot less expensive than big pipe sewers, like inlet widening, like shellfish propagation, like denitrifying septic systems. We've come up with some really great stuff out of our own Barnstable County Health Department, George Hoyfelder, which we call a layer cake that can be used for our septic systems that would virtually eliminate nitrogen deposits. So I think also oysters are a very promising way to address this issue.
That's a good way to refer to it, layer cake. I have to remember that. Michael Blanton, same question.
I don't know if I find that all that appetizing, but it's appropriate. Wastewater is really the 800-pound gorilla that stifles growth and for here on the Cape. And if we do so in such it as proposed, if we were to be forced by a lawsuit to sewer all of Cape Cod, we studied this on the Cape Cod Commission. And when I served there, we looked at this in depth over several years, and it's still continuing to be studied. The price tag's estimated as of a couple of years ago as being $8 billion for Cape Cod to sewer all of Cape Cod. So we know that that's financially untenable. But there are various solutions that have been studied. When I was serving with the Cape Cod Commission, we looking at the demographics of different communities to find out whether or not a cluster satellite plant might be a smaller size plant for a particular neighborhood or community might be the way to go. Innovative technologies are emerging all the time with regard to ultraviolet that can remove bacteria from effluent. There's so much that can be done with shellfish propagation, but really sewer is not the way to go. There are a myriad of solutions we can use to solve that problem.
All right, thank you. Michael Blanton, do you agree with Cape Cod residents who are concerned about the region's water aquifer and who say utility companies should not be allowed to spray herbicides to kill vegetation beneath power lines?
Absolutely. What are we without our water? Drinking water is the source from which we all pull, and we do have the benefit of one of the unique regions in the Commonwealth that we do have a sole source aquifer. Unlike the city of Boston, which trucks all of its water on in from the Quabbin Reservoir, we get our drinking water right here. But as we've seen the increase of residential growth, if we've seen neighborhood sprawl, all of those septic systems being put on into the ground, as we were talking about earlier, do contribute to the nitrogen loading that eventually finds its way into groundwater. We have to mitigate against that. Herbicides that are being sprayed by the utilities companies have to be regulated. There are so many other new technologies, new chemistries, and new practices that can be used to try to manage those areas, and the utilities companies are certainly in a position to be able to bear that cost, and I think it's not too much to ask the utility companies to bear that cost as opposed to the dire health consequences that could hit all of us should they not.
All right, Matt Patrick.
Oh, well, of course. This is motherhood and apple pie here on Cape Cod. I'm certainly not going to be opposed, but I think one of the promising ways of addressing it is with, believe it or not, goats. Mm-hmm. Goats, you just fence them in, and they will literally eat everything that's growing within their confinement. I first became familiar with goats in Africa when I was in the Peace Corps in Ghana, and talking to forestry volunteers who said they can't seem to keep trees in the ground because the goats keep eating them, no matter what they do to protect them. And I said, well, what can you do? And they said, well, if somebody wanted to give us all the ammunition we needed and all the gasoline, we ride around in Jeeps and just shoot goats because they will eat everything that they see. So good thing to do.
Yeah, so I'm going to take 30 seconds for this next question. And this is voters are going to decide in the ballot box in November whether to legalize adult use of marijuana. Where do you stand on that, Matt Patrick?
I am still undecided, but I am leaning in opposition. I think there is a lot of concerns yet to be addressed. If we make it legal, will young people be more likely to use it? I don't know. Some people think that is the case. Young people meaning underage people.
All right, Michael Blanton.
And I'm going to lean exactly the opposite direction. Unfortunately, I think the reality is that young people are using it right now, and I'd like to see more education go on into the detrimental issues of abuse. But I also think that in a society where we encourage legal alcohol consumption, we can find ways to encourage legal marijuana consumption. Also, there's a tremendous growth in medical marijuana, which I do support and have advocated for as a selectman over in Bourne. But I do want to see that the law enforcement and judiciary puts laws in place to police it properly.
All right, we're going to do closing statements now. Michael Blanton, you are first.
Oh, thank
2
you.
minutes. I'll give you a 1 minute sign so you know. 2 minutes.
Thank you, Mindy. I appreciate the opportunity. And granted, thanks so much for having us here. Again, my name is Michael Blanton. I'm from Monument Beach. I'm a local guy who grew up here on the Upper Cape, went to school in Bourne, developed my real estate practice in Mashpee, moved it over to Falmouth when we came on over here, where I live, work, and play, go to church, educate my family. And the reason why I'm running is because I think I really bring a diverse set of skills that would be beneficial to the area. And over a decade and a half worth of public service in various and sundry areas, having served for 8 years as the town of Bourne's representative to the Cape Cod Commission, I became very familiar with the regulatory and planning regime to make sure that we promote and control growth and development in a way that's beneficial for the Cape, that handles the environmental concerns, transportation concerns, economic development concerns, all while keeping the Cape special. And that was really our watchword. I served with the Bourne Housing Authority and the Falmouth Housing Trust, and I became very familiar with affordable housing issues for folks who aren't able to afford to transition on in here. These are issues that I feel very comfortable with. Having worked for 15 years on the Cape as a real estate broker, I understand real estate brokerage, investment, and negotiations. I've served as a staffer for John Kerry and developed a love of serving others while down in D.C. and also advocating for issues in the Commonwealth and in Capitol Hill. So I think that the residents of the 3rd Barnstable District would be well suited to consider me, and I'm asking for their vote on September 8th.
Thank you very much. Matt Patrick.
My name is Matt Patrick, and I'm asking for your vote. Electing somebody to state office is an opportunity to get things done, and we have some serious problems to deal with. Income and wealth inequality are real problems that we can do something about by raising the minimum wage and not subsidizing big box stores and fast food franchises. Global warming is real. We can continue to ignore it at our own peril, or we can get serious about it. Gun deaths by assault rifles are real problems. Do we have to have a massacre in Massachusetts before we do something about it? Drug addiction is another crushing problem. We can do much more to eliminate it than we are currently doing. We must do more than just treating the symptoms. And our healthcare system is a disgrace. Insurance executives should not be earning multi-million-dollar salaries in healthcare. People should not be paying up to $10,000 deductibles to get treatment. We need a single-payer healthcare system like Medicare for all. You can elect someone that cares about you and has a proven track record of getting things done. Experience counts, and you know I have it. Stand with me, and I will stand with you on the floor of the Massachusetts House to make sure our voices are heard and acted upon. Again, my name is Matt Patrick, and I'm asking for your vote. I'm endorsed by the Mass teachers, the Mass nurses, the Sierra Club, the SEIU hospital workers, the Independent Brotherhood of Electrical Workers, 2222, Coalition for Social Justice, Mass Care, and Mass Alliance. Thank you.
Thank you. Matt Patrick and Michael Blanton, thank you both for coming in and sharing your thoughts with us today.
Thank you,
Our
Mindy.
primary
Thank you, Mindy.
debates will continue every Thursday leading up to the primary on September 8th. The schedule of debates as well as links to the candidates are on our website, capeandislands.org. Just click on the News tab. I'm Mindy Todd. Thanks for listening.
The Point is produced by Amy Vince. The executive producer is Mindy Todd. Production assistance from Jenny Junker. Theme music by Benjamin Verdery and William Coulter.